Hello, today I'm going to tell you all about this book, Positive Parenting, An Essential Guide, Ending the Power Struggles and Reconnecting from the Heart by Rebecca Eanes. Now I'm going to give you my personal review at the beginning and then try to really stick with just telling you what this book says. This is not one of my go-to books for parenting, but it has some great ideas, and just in general, I don't always agree with the positive parenting theoretical approach. It's like a lot of the thoughts or philosophies behind the advice that they give, but it was a very good explanation of why that field kind of thinks that way, and I definitely got some things out of it. So very good read. I personally didn't agree with some of the things that it said. It is a pretty quick read, and it's more big ideas and less like practical things that you can do right now. One thing that I love about this book is that it actually addresses you as the parent first and your relationship with your parenting partner, and that's huge. And a lot of books don't cover that topic, which I think we do have to start there whenever we're talking about parenting. So that was a great feature of this book. So the introduction talks about how the goal of positive parenting is to create a healthy, connected family that benefits not just the children, but also you as the parent. The author says that this process starts with you or with me, whoever the parent is. The process starts with the parent. And so because the process starts with the parent, the book starts by talking about the work that we as parents need to do in ourselves to become the best parent that we can be. You are the person those little eyes are looking up to and learning from every day. The author says that this book will help you learn to deactivate your triggers, to gain confidence and self-discipline, and to take charge of your life story so your entire family can reap the benefits. Chapter 1 is called Parenting Philosophy. She opens with a quote by Gordon Newfield, a developmental psychologist. He said that many people believe that discipline is the essence of parenting, but that's not parenting. Parenting is not telling your child what to do when he or she misbehaves. Parenting is providing the conditions in which a child can realize his or her full potential. The author says that we are meant to enjoy our children and each day that we are blessed to spend with them. They are gifts, but instead of joyfully unwrapping this miracle of life, we fall into this pit of just trying to manage all their behaviors. As I mentioned a little bit in the introduction, this author has a different background and belief about behavior than we do based on all of our research in the field of behavior analysis. So positive parenting doesn't mean it's the only way to positively parent your child. It's actually a very specific and narrow theoretical approach, and it's different than ours. So the author here makes some comments that as a board-certified behavior analyst, I don't agree with, and the research doesn't really support it. She talks about tantrums and sleep training, and so I just have to say my piece that we don't agree, and the research I wouldn't say supports what she is saying, but it is an interesting perspective, and it's one that I hear commonly by other parents. The author talks about how the more we wield our parental power, then the worse our child behaves, and the less connected that we are with our kids. So the definition of positive parenting, that very specific theoretical approach, is that it is a philosophy rooted in connection. And that connection is a different way to relate to children that allows us to maintain a strong bond with them through all ages and stages while raising them to be kind and responsible adults. And so again, this is not the only way to parent in a positive way, but this is a very specific philosophy that I don't agree with all the time. But for me, learning about positive parenting helps me understand the perspective of other parents that might really believe and agree with everything in this philosophy. So the author says that more conventional parenting methods pit the adult against the child. So there's like a versus relationship instead of a connection. The author also says no to any form of punishment, but yes to discipline. And this has come up in another book where the way they're defining punishment is very different than the behavioral way to define punishment. So I have to throw that out there again. But they are saying they don't want to ever do things to intentionally harm their child or punish their child, but they do want to have effective discipline. So there are 5 principles of positive parenting, and the first is attachment. Kids need to feel a secure attachment so that they feel safe. There are research studies that demonstrate that if children don't develop a strong attachment bond early in life, they are more likely to have behavioral problems and relationship problems later on. A good attachment is formed by being responsive to your child's needs. You do this when you respond promptly and lovingly to your child's cries or needs. It's when you understand their cues for food or play and you respond accordingly. It's when you give full focused attention and you are present in that moment. You also form an attachment by providing a lot of positive attention to your child. The second principle of positive parenting is respect. Children need to be treated in a thoughtful and civil and courteous manner. It promotes a very positive and nurturing parenting style. The third principle is proactive parenting. This is where we address any problem behaviors at the very first sign instead of waiting till they get worse and worse. To be a proactive parent, you're putting a lot more effort into the relationship with your child on the front end, so then you're spending less time managing behavior challenges later on. Reactive parents may respond to their child impulsively or emotionally. And proactive or responsible parents are those that can stay calm and have a plan of how to respond to their child. The fourth principle is empathetic leadership. Being empathetic means that we understand the needs of our children, and we relate to them in a way that they feel heard, and we're also maintaining boundaries. And the fifth principle is positive discipline. And here they're using that definition of punishment where it's to make someone suffer. And they define discipline as teaching someone to control their impulses and their behavior, to learn new skills, to fix mistakes, and to solve problems. The author has a section called Brain Science 101, and she talks about our reptilian brain, or what she refers to as our downstairs brain. She's referring to that primitive part of our brain that was formed first. This part of our brain is what's responsible for strong emotions, for our instincts, and our basic functions. She also describes our thinking brain as the upstairs brain. This is responsible for more sophisticated and complex thinking. But the upstairs brain is very underdeveloped at birth and slowly develops through childhood and into adulthood. The author talks about positive discipline. Step 1 in positive discipline is to assess the need. This is an area that positive parenting and behavior analysis definitely have in common, and that we all believe that all behavior is a form of communication. It's our job as the adult or the parent to assess what that need is, and then try to address that, which will often make the problem behavior disappear. Or sometimes behavior is communicating the need for your child to learn a new skill. After you've assessed the need, step 2 is to calm yourself and your child. Undisciplined parents cannot then effectively discipline their children. So we have to calm ourselves down first and discipline ourselves first. Once I'm calm, then I can help my child become calm. Step 3 is to teach and problem solve. And this is where we want to teach the child what they should do. Chapter 2 is called Important Self-Work. And again, I do love that the author starts here. This is very similar to the Radiant Parent Program's approach, where we always want to start with ourselves and what we're doing and what we can change. So the author talks about how we have to take charge and become the author of our own story. She talks about changing our thought patterns. If we want to raise positive thinkers, then we need to be positive thinkers. She goes into 4 ways to help us change our own thought patterns that are pretty helpful. She talks more in this chapter about the need to discipline ourselves first. If I expect my child to be kind and gentle and compassionate and respectful, then I must be kind, gentle, compassionate, and respectful. We really must be what we want them to be. And sometimes that requires us to grow up emotionally. Many of us didn't learn how to handle emotions in childhood, and we have to learn now so then we can teach our kids. The author talks about the importance of identifying your triggers. Triggers are those things that just really get under your skin and drive you crazy. The author says that we have been armed with a lot of emotional triggers on our life journey. Triggers may explain an emotional outburst from a parent, but they do not excuse it. The author says, yes, children can push your buttons, but they are your buttons, and so you are responsible for how you react. Page 36 in this book has some great calm down techniques to help you identify your triggers and how to calm down when one of your buttons is pushed. The author says, and I agree, it won't do you any good to know how to discipline your child if you don't know how to discipline yourself first. One of the great strategies she recommends here is to add space between your child's action and your reaction by taking deep breaths in between and maybe by repeating a mantra like, "This is not an emergency," or "I am calm and capable of handling this." Inserting a pause between when your child does something and when you react can be huge. Taking that deep breath or repeating that mantra to yourself can help you gain control of yourself, be more self-disciplined, and not feel so emotional about it and be able to think better about the best way to respond. Chapter 3 is called United We Stand. Bringing two people from two different families to try to make a new family is always a challenge. The author says that couples rarely talk about those differences before they have kids because it doesn't occur to them. Your relationship with your partner is very important. How you handle conflicts, how you treat each other, the attention you give each other or lack thereof is setting the tone in your home. Where we focus our attention and intention is the direction that our life will go. When we focus on flaws and annoyances, we are choosing to focus on those things, and that is the direction our life is going to go. The other option is to choose to see all the wonderful things about your partner and focus on the light and love they bring to your life. The author talks about the importance of focusing on uniting differences between you and your partner. One way to do this is to fill up their emotional tank. You can do this by making daily emotional deposits into their tank. A word of encouragement, a loving gesture, sweet texts, compliments. Each time we do things like this, it puts a little deposit into our partner's emotional tank. And the more full the tank is, the more connected and better relationship that we'll have. It's also very important to focus on the positives. When we choose to see the best in others, we then bring out the best in others and ourselves as well. We all need at least one person who sees the best in us and believes in us. So let's be that person for our partner. The author talks about a lot of other ways to help unite any differences with your partner, like arguing constructively in a conflict, treating each other with respect, be flirtatious, give each other space, be intimate, have fun together, show appreciation, be affectionate, be trustworthy, curb criticism, share leadership, be proactive when it comes to common relationship problems, and communicate effectively. That brings us to chapter 4, which is called Communicate Effectively. The author talks about conditional versus unconditional love. Conditional love is, I love you if you do this or are this, where unconditional love is, I love you no matter what you do, no matter who you are. Many of us have only learned to offer conditional love. So it's always, I love you if, or I love you when. And this becomes obvious in our communication, both verbally and non-verbally. However, we can choose to be loving even if we aren't feeling loved. The author talks about using I statements. Instead of saying, you make me furious when you don't get home on time, you could say, I feel worried when you're late, and then I start to feel overwhelmed. Look for win-win solutions to problems and never make assumptions. It's also important to look at how we're communicating with our child. How we communicate with our kids often determines how they'll communicate back with us. We often set the tone for that communication exchange. When we make eye contact with our kids when we're talking and we are completely focused on them, we are showing them that they are important. You're teaching your child how to communicate with every interaction you have with them. So make sure you're teaching them how to communicate well. The more often you use yelling or harsh words to make your kid listen, the more often you'll need to, because your child will learn they don't have to really listen to you until you explode and get really upset. And then your child will learn to communicate with others in that same way. The author talks about the importance of being respectful to our kids. We can be very respectful to our children and still be very much in charge. And that gives our kids the message that they are respectable. Pages 69 to 73 have a lot more specific tips on how to communicate better with your child. Chapter 5 is called Building a Foundation of Trust. The author cites that research has shown that a secure attachment is a great foundation for building healthy emotional, intellectual, physical, and social development. You can foster trust and connect with a child at any age. To build trust with a toddler or a preschooler, she recommends to practice what you preach, to listen to the little things that he or she says now, so he or she will tell you the big things later. Be honest. If you're too busy to take your kid to the park, don't say the park is closed. Keep your promises. Praise the process, not the results. Schedules and routines are also very important in helping foster trust and connection with your child. Chapter 6 is called Define Your Family Culture. She says that happy families intentionally create their family culture. She says there are 7 pillars of a family culture. The first is values. The second is disposition, or like the temperament of your family. The third is the expectations that you have for members of your family. The fourth is our habits. The fifth is how we communicate. The sixth is our expectations on how to resolve conflict. And the seventh is our traditions, so our daily routines, our weekly traditions, and our holiday traditions. The author talks about making a family blueprint, which is kind of like a family mission statement. This unites your family with a shared set of goals and becomes a code of conduct to teach your kids. The author says that this is where your legacy starts, in this family blueprint that you hand down to your kids. To make a family blueprint, you would start with a list of your family values and beliefs, and then your individual and family goals. Then you write out a final product, have everyone in the family sign it, and place it somewhere highly visible. Routines and rituals are very valuable in creating your family culture. Power struggles often occur because kids feel like they have little control over their daily lives. Giving a child control over his routine and rhythm helps reduce power struggles. Routines let you be more efficient in completing daily tasks and allow you to give fewer instructions to your kids. Rituals become the warm memories that your child will look back on. Having strong family rituals is more likely to lead to resilience in adults. Pages 102 and 103 has a lot of ideas and examples of different family rituals to consider. Part of your family culture is how you address sibling rivalry. So it's normal for kids living under the same roof to have occasional disagreements. But cultivating a strong sibling bond is important for maintaining peace in your home. The author says that one of the mistakes parents make is by comparing one sibling to another. Instead of comparing, describe what you see, what you like, what needs to change or what needs to be done, but leave other children out of it. Another mistake is labeling your child. Instead, make sure that each of your children feel loved enough, valued enough, and good enough about themselves. The author also talks about victories in creating a strong sibling bond. So the first is to acknowledge that bond and praise your kids when they're getting along well. The second is to create a team atmosphere. Like in this family, we're a team and we help each other out. Another way to encourage a strong sibling bond is to set clear limits. Set a boundary that your kids must remain respectful even when they disagree, and teach them conflict resolution skills so they can work it out themselves. Chapter 7 is called Seeing Children in a New Way. Children don't enter the world with bad intentions. As parents, the author says it helps us to look a little deeper about what our child's experiencing or what it means to be a child, instead of just focusing on what it means to raise one. The author asks, why do we find it acceptable to speak so terribly to and about our children? Do we think they don't understand? The author recommends that we assume that kids have good intentions, not bad intentions, and that we assume their behavior is communication, not manipulation. Some parents may measure their kids' success or their success as parents by their child's grades or how clean their room is. But the author, and myself as well, measures success as how kind and compassionate my kids are. The author encourages us to vow to be the person in our child's life who always sees their light and reflects it back to them. We all behave how we see ourselves, so it can become a vicious negative cycle if we're reflecting back a negative vision to our kids. Then they will see themselves as behaving badly, and they will become a child who behaves badly. Choose to see a positive intent. Your child isn't a bad person. They just need guidance about this issue. Chapter 8 is called Raising Emotionally Healthy Children. Carl Rogers is a famous psychologist who is known for his work in treating people with unconditional positive regard. It's possible and necessary for unconditional love and discipline to coexist. Conditional positive regard is when a child only receives approval when she is performing to the parent's expectation of behavior. And when that child makes a mistake, the parent's approval is withdrawn. The child is not loved for who she is, but on the condition that she behaves in a certain way that makes the parents happy. Unconditional positive regard is when the parents fully accept the child for who she is, and that positive regard is not withdrawn if the child makes a mistake. The author talks about ways that we can build our child's self-esteem. Some tips are showing positive affection, using positive body language like looking them in the eyes, smiling, using words of encouragement and affirmation, and giving them undivided attention. Page 127 has even more ideas and ways to do this. Chapter 9 is called Trading Punishment for Solutions. So in the positive parenting perspective or philosophy, the author says that most parents are accustomed to training children through pain, such as a sharp word or a slap on the hand. The author says this does work for a while because children have a biological need to connect with their parents. The positive parenting approach believes that this then triggers that fight or flight response in children, which bypasses their thinking brain and goes right to that reptilian brain and inhibits their ability to learn. The author says instead we can look for solutions instead of punishment. Have our children learn how to fix their mistakes and not just pay for their mistakes. To do this, we can look for a reason behind the behavior. We have to remember to discipline ourselves before we try to discipline our child. We connect with our kids by conveying our understanding and our love for them. We seek a resolution to the problem, and then we look at restoration and reconnection. This is where we reestablish trust and rebuild our child's self-concept. We restore feelings of self-worth. And she says that your child should come out on the other side of that discipline experience feeling like you believe he or she is a good person, even though they occasionally make mistakes. The positive parenting philosophy does not believe in timeouts. Personally, I have to say that timeouts work amazing in my family, and I am a fan of timeouts, at least with my kids. But when I was reading the why on why this philosophy does not like timeouts, it was very interesting. The author says that it is wounding for children to experience that separation from their parent. And when fear of separation is what stops the behavior, that desire to be good afterward comes from a place of insecurity. And that activates that lower reptilian brain and may activate some anxiety and aggression in children. The author says that timeout is also not giving kids the tools that they need to succeed. Now again, I think you can use timeout really well and not do any of those things, but it was definitely an interesting perspective. The author talks about using time in instead. And this is where you focus on the connection first and then the teaching. She says that connection will engage your upstairs brain. It calms the activity in your child's lower brain and helps your child access that thinking part of their brain. The author says that to use time in, you can bring the child into your lap or into a calm down area in your home. She says ideas for some activities that could be in your calm down area are books, a drawing pad, a calm down glitter jar, rice for sensory play, and maybe balloons to pop. The author says that when your child is not listening or is upset, you should bring them to this calm down area and sit with them to do those calming activities. And then when the child stops crying or struggling, you can start to tell that the thinking brain is back on. And that's when you can talk about what to do next time that happens. I, Melissa, have to say that I have often seen this done wrong, and so it makes the behaviors worse. But I can see if you do it exactly right, it could work for some kids. So if you want to try this and it works for you, great. But if not, we can totally help you troubleshoot this. But there's a lot of ways it could go wrong quickly. The author says that children only view it, meaning one-on-one attention, as a reward if it's the only time they get your positive attention, which is not the case in your home. And so I just have to say that that statement, in my experience, is false. We can't say that we are all giving our kids the right amount of positive attention. So that's a really individual family-to-family thing, and depending on how much attention that your kid needs. The author has some other good alternatives. If your kids are fighting over something, she will remove the item and just say, your relationship is more important than this toy. She talks about having older siblings go to a peace table, and this is a special place they go to resolve an argument. She recommends having a talking feather or talking item, and only the person holding the talking feather can talk. She says you can help facilitate this conversation with your kids at the peace table at first, and then gradually they'll be able to start doing it on their own. And they can't leave the peace table until they've come to an agreeable solution. She gives a suggestion of pulling over. If you're driving and the kids are being noisy or not listening or being distracting, say, I can't concentrate with you two arguing. I'll drive when you've reached peace. She suggests having a child write it out. So if your child breaks a rule, sit with them and have them write out the rule. She also talks about giving grace. We can't hold our kids to an inhuman standard. We have to know that they are human and they will make mistakes, just like we do. Chapter 10 is called Top Parenting Challenges and How to Use Proactive Parenting to Deal with Them. This was one of the most practical chapters, so I definitely recommend checking this one out. In this chapter, she addresses what she says are the top 5 behavior problems that parents report. Number 1 is aggression. To deal with your child's aggression, she says discipline yourself first. She recommends being proactive and making sure that you're not using fear-based discipline with your child that could be causing some of that anxiety or frustration. She recommends using time in and problem solving in place of punishment, teaching your child about emotional intelligence, and allowing your child to rest in your love. The second behavior she talks about is whining. She says that parents often see whining as a form of manipulation, but that it's actually a form of mature crying. She encourages parents to see whining as a small human trying to get their needs met instead of feeling manipulated. She says to listen, look for reasons behind the whining behavior, and provide lots of preemptive cuddles and laughter. The author talks about what to do when kids don't listen. She says that the ways that parents typically try to get cooperation from their kids causes their kids to tune them out. She says to use a firm and respectful tone at a conversational distance from your child. She recommends using I statements instead of will you. She says ask your child once and then take action. The next behavior she talks about is tantrums. She says that many parents perceive a tantrum as an act of defiance, manipulation, or bratty behavior. But she says that the truth is that a tantrum is a way that your child is telling you they're experiencing emotions that they cannot control. She says that kids don't like having tantrums any more than we like seeing them. The author says that empathizing with your child during a tantrum is not rewarding that tantrum. It's meeting a need for connection and understanding. As Melissa talking, it's not as simple as that. That's sometimes true, but not always true. The author also says be proactive. Make sure your kids are getting enough rest, enough physical activity. Be aware of their triggers and try to prevent them. Use that time in or calm down area, and teach emotional intelligence. The fifth behavior she talks about is backtalk. She says first, set a good example. Don't yell at your child or ignore their request without an explanation, or they'll do the same back to you. She says to word your instructions as statements and not as questions. Use when-then statements. When you pick up your toys, then you can play outside. Listen to what's really behind the words and to see what's motivating your child. Show the child that you're listening and that you care how he feels while holding your limit. Listen and keep an open mind. That's it for my book summary on positive parenting. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll get to talk to you about it soon. Thanks.